Hello, everyone. My name is Yoav Waxman, and I'm a professor of economics in the World College of Business at Coastal Carolina University. And today we're going to cover lesson 8 in Econ 202, which is microeconomics. And lesson 8 is about public goods. And public goods are goods that are both non-excludable, which means you cannot exclude people from using them, and they're non-rival. So in this page, we have two examples of public goods. On the top left, you see a lighthouse. You cannot exclude ship from using the lighthouse. If you're close to the shore, any ship can see it. And it's also non-rival in the sense that multiple ships can use the lighthouse at the same time. The same is true for public park. By definition, it's public, it's non-excludable. Anyone can enter the park or exit the park, and it's non-rivalable. As you can see from the picture, many people are enjoying the park at the same time. We're also going to talk about different type of good. We're going to categorize them. We're going to look at club goods, common resources, and private good, and explain the differences and discuss a little bit about government policy and how the government addresses the public good. So with no further ado, let's get to the introduction. Okay, so this presentation, we're going to explore public goods and why government provide them. So as discussed earlier, about public good meets two requirements. They are non-excludable and they're non-rival. And we're going to talk about why government have to provide them because the private market is not very good at providing these products like public park. If we expected individual to provide public parks, they probably won't see many public parks because everyone has incentive to free ride, which means they have incentive to enjoy the park without paying for it. It also will examine the positive externalities of research and education. We discussed externalities in previous lesson, and the idea of externalities and public goods are connected. So education is something that multiple people can enjoy. It is non-rival, and the government can set up in a way that's non-excludable. In other words, mandated and allow anyone to go to K-12 education. We're going to look at the different types of good. As I noted, public goods are non-rival, non-excludable. Private goods are the opposite. They're rival and excludable. So if you think about a cup of coffee, you're the only one who can drink it, and only somebody who buys that cup of coffee can enjoy it. Club goods are uh, excludable, so you can prevent people from using them, but they're non-rival, so many people can use them at the same time. And the word club gives you a hint of what club goods are. So if you think about, for example, a fitness club that many people can use at the same time, or a nightclub, those are both examples of club goods. And finally, we're going to look at common resources. And common resources are non-excludable, but there are rival, so they could be exhausted. And if you think about fish in the ocean, if all of us came and took them out at the same time, the fishery would collapse. We also going to discuss climate change and the idea of shared resources and how global agreement can help us manage those shared resources. And we're going to review real-world examples that relate to public goods. So at the bottom left, we have an example of a public good in the United States. So in the United States, we made COVID-19 vaccine available to everyone for free. So it can be excludable, but the government decided to make it not excludable. And by using the COVID-19 vaccine, we're not only protecting ourselves, we're protecting other individuals. So there's a positive benefit or positive externality associated with vaccination. And at the bottom right, we see a good example of a public good, and that is national security. So the military is supposed to protect our country, and it protects anyone who lives in the United States, whether they live here legally or illegally, whether they're young or old. So it's really a non-excludable and non-rival good. Let's begin with the idea of research. So research has profound impact on the economy. We'll talk a little bit about why government funds research. So government funds research because private firms under invest in innovation. So it's important to note that on many occasions, the private market does provide some of these goods, but doesn't provide enough of it. There's an underinvestment in research. For instance, a lot of government development became something that the public domain has used. Both the internet and GPS were initially developed for the U.S. Department of Defense, so they were used to communicate for military communication and also to track things like where the ships were and where the tanks were. So you can see at the bottom left, you can see how the military would use its GPS system to track its own military and enemy's military, but over time it became available to the public. Now, remember when we first started using GPS, the public was able to use GPS or global positioning system, but not at the same level of accuracy as the military. And now we're at a point where we can even walk down the street and the GPS can track every movement. For those of you who don't know, GPS work using satellite. It basically calibrates three different satellites, and by measuring how far you are from each of the three satellites, it can calculate exactly where you are on planet Earth. Drugs is another example of where government funding may be needed, particularly for diseases that are not very common. So if you develop a drug for diabetes, that's something that could sell a lot and create a lot of money for the company. But if you look at rare diseases, there's typically underinvestment that those diseases because it's very expensive to develop drugs, and the benefit is pretty small if there's only a small number of patients. So a typical drug will cost $1.4 billion to develop, and 90% or more of all drugs fail approval. So if you look at the process of getting drugs to the open market, first of all, you have a process of discovery, which takes 3 to 6 years to develop a typical drug. Then you go for pre-critical research, which involve either using animals or a small group of healthy individuals. Then that takes another 6 to 7 years usually. Then you go to clinical research, which takes up to a year. And then you have an extensive review by the FDA before finally going through post-market survey and look into long-term effect of the drugs. So it may take anywhere from 10 to 15 years for drugs to develop. And a lot of these do not pass one of these stages and therefore never make it to the market. Thus, there is incentive for the government to invest, particularly in drugs that are for rare diseases and would not be developed without some government investment. The government also gives a 20-year patent to allow firms to profit from their invention. This may seem unfair, particularly for life-saving drugs, if a company develops drugs that people depend on. However, if we stop and consider the fact that it will take the company 10 to 15 years just to get the drug to the market, and they have to invest a lot of money in that development, and many times don't achieve their goal and never get the drug to the market, patent could be a good way to incentivize companies to keep investing in drugs and hopefully benefit from some of them financially. Eli Whitney is one of the more famous examples where he created the cotton gin, which is one of the most widely used machine back in the 19th century, particularly in the south of the United States. But he hasn't patented the machine and therefore never benefited from it financially, even though it was widely used. Education is another one of these resources that the government invests in heavily. Specifically, the government provides K-12 education for free or at very least highly subsidized, and also provide various grants and loans for college education. One of the big reasons for it is that college graduates are far more productive and earn a lot more than high school graduates. So on the bottom right, we have a graph that shows that people without a high school degree earn on average $708 a week. If they complete the college, high school degree, they earn about $899. With a bachelor degree, they earn almost $1,500. And with a doctorate degree, they earn over $2,000 a year. So we could see that investing in college has a nice return, even though it's a very expensive investment. And it benefits not only the individual, but also it benefits society because education creates positive externality. If you go and get college education, you're likely to be a more productive individual. You're far less likely to commit crime. You're probably going to be a better parent. You can provide mentorship for other people like your coworkers, and all those things have positive externalities for other individuals around you. And that's why the government provides about $112 billion yearly for college aid, and comes in several forms. Pell Grant, as shown on the bottom left, are designed specifically to support people with lower income and help them go to college by just giving them money. And also the government subsidizes and provide collateral for a lot of college loan. So you can get a lower rate if you get a federal loan as opposed to a private student loan. Let's look at positive externalities and policy. Vaccination protects both individual and surrounding community. But it's important to note we need what's called the herd immunity, which is shown on the bottom left. We don't need necessarily everyone to get vaccinated. Some people cannot get vaccinated because they're too young, or perhaps they have an autoimmune disease. But if 70 to 80% of us get vaccinated, we can eliminate the spread of diseases because individuals are less likely to contact somebody who's not vaccinated. And that was really the goal with COVID-19. We never really got quite to that rate of herd immunization, but we're able to control the pandemic by having the majority of the people in the United States vaccinated. And there are two ways we're able to achieve it. One is we accelerated the drug approval process, which I think got some people worried about the quality and potential side effect of drugs. And the second thing is that the government provided the COVID-19 vaccination for free. So we say the positive externalities occur with social benefit exceeds the private benefit. So at the bottom right, we see a graph with a typical supply and demand. The demand is the black line going down, supply is the red line going up. But we also recognize that the actual demand by society, what we call the social marginal benefit, is higher than the private demand. So we should be producing more vaccination than the private market will provide. And there is some deadweight loss if there's no government support for things like higher education and vaccination. The government needs to intervene because the private demand underestimate the social value. Now, we talked about these benefits, but let's look at the different types of good that exist in our society. And they exist along two dimensions. Goods can be excludable, which means you can prevent people from using them, or non-excludable. Now, there are two reasons why a good would be non-excludable. One, it's too expensive and too complicated to exclude people from using it. So think of the idea of the ocean. You can't really prevent people from enjoying the ocean or enjoying beaches. It's too expensive. But they also could be non-excludable because of legal requirements. So, for example, we provide K-12 education to everyone in the United States, as we do in most countries, and that is non-excludable by design. Good can also be rival or non-rival. Rival means that only one or a small group of individuals can consume at the same time. So if you think of your car, only you can drive it, or maybe you and your family. Whereas non-rival means that many people can use it at the same time. So if you think of the large football stadium, you could have 60, 70, 80,000 people use the stadium at the same time. Private good are both excludable and rival. And there are many examples of private good. We use them all the time. When we eat food, nobody else can eat it. When we wear a piece of clothing, nobody else can wear it. So those are the most common used type of goods we use in our society. Collab goods, on the other hand, are excludable, but they're non-rival, which means that many people can use it at the same time. Think of a streaming service like Netflix or Disney Plus. Many people can stream the same show at the same time, but Netflix can prevent you from using their service and they can make you pay for it. The same thing is true of golf clubs. Many people could play golf at the same time, or a movie theater. Many people could go to movies at the same time. However, you have to pay a fee to use these services. So there are club goods. Club goods doesn't necessarily mean that an unlimited amount of people can use the good. Eventually, even a movie theater or a golf course gets too crowded. There's also a category called common resources. These categories are rival, which means if you use it, I cannot use it, but they're non-excludable, which makes them very challenging to manage. So think about fisheries. If everyone goes out and fish at the same time, the fish will be gone. Or if all of us go out and cut trees from the forest will be gone. The same thing is true of clean air. If we all pollute the air at the same time, eventually we won't have enough clean air for everyone. So it's very difficult, in fact, impossible, to prevent people from um, everyone from polluting the air, and that what makes it a common resource. Public goods, which is going to be the focus for today, are non-rival and non-excludable. As noted earlier, national defense is one of them, a park, and beaches. Sometimes people organize a public good on purpose. Think of a movie outside. Where I live, we have outdoor movies and anyone can come and see them. So there are essentially public good provided by the city. Let's go back and look at private goods. Private goods are rival, which means only one consumer or one household can consume at a given time. And they include things like food, clothes, but also toys and electronics. So at the bottom left, we have the example of a headset. Only one person can use at a time, a laptop, and other electronic equipment. Markets provide private goods efficiently. So usually with private good, there's really no need for government intervention. But sometimes they have positive or negative externality, which may require some government regulation. Think of single-use plastic on the bottom right. This is a private good, right? If you use a paper cup or plastic cup, nobody else can use it. However, they also create a lot of trash, and much of the trash ends up in the ocean, creating problems like animals consuming it or choking on it. So eventually, some of that plastic will make it as microplastic or very small pieces of plastic back into our diet. So there may be a need for the government to regulate single-use plastic. In fact, there are countries in the world that have banned single-use plastic completely. In the market economy, anyone who's willing and able to purchase private goods may do so. So again, generally, the market is very efficient in providing these unless there's negative and positive externality, which require maybe government subsidies or taxes, and sometimes even command control policies to manage. Our focus, however, is not on public good. We talk about national defense, protecting all citizens without exclusion. Public park and beaches allow open access and shared enjoyment. Now, there are public goods at multiple levels. Some of them are federal level, like national park or national refuge, state parks, and local parks. Street lighting is another example of a public good. Now, at the bottom right, we have a picture of a road with street lights. Both the road itself and the streetlights are public goods because many cars can use the road at the same time, and the streetlight help prevent accidents. Radio signal is another great example of a public good. Anyone with a radio can receive radio signals. However, nowadays we have digital radio like XM radio, and only people who pay for that service can receive it. So the same type of good could be a public good or a club good. Weather forecasting provides yet another example of a public good because it helps people prepare. And on the bottom left, we have what is called a levee system. And you can see how the river's overflown, but the levee system is protecting everyone else on the other side. And this is not a great example of a public good. With a public good, you typically have a free rider problem, which means people have incentive to enjoy the public good without paying for them. Now, this is one of the big reasons why we have government. One of the roles of government, which was recognized by Adam Smith, which many call the founder of modern economics, he recognized that governments are needed to provide things like police, military, build roads, all those public goods that wouldn't be underprovided or not provided by a private market. But you can also think of it in a more local level. If you live in a neighborhood, you might have things like a swimming pool that everyone can enjoy, or a public park or playground. And the HOA will collect fees from all the houses and use some of those fees to provide public goods, like streetlights. Private markets struggle to provide non-excludable goods, which is why the government uses taxes to fund public good and prevent underprovision. One example of such a tax is called a Lindell tax. In principle, a Lindell tax is pretty simple. So if you look at the bottom right, we see a graph with the marginal benefit for one individual and the marginal benefit for the second individual. So we have one individual in brown and one in green. Without government provision, the individual in green will provide a private quantity of Q and P, right, the private quantity, and the second individual in brown won't provide anything because they're already enjoying the right amount for them. But the truth is that if you look at the social marginal benefit, it's marked by the red line. And we should be at Q star, the socially optimal quantity. And the only way for us to get it is for the government to charge each of the individual a tax. And the Lindell tax charges each individual their marginal benefit. So the person with the green marginal benefit will pay a little bit more because they have a higher marginal benefit than the individual in brown. Lindell tax are a fair way to allocate public good, but the reality is that the government, of course, have no way of knowing each of our marginal benefit. And even if they ask us, we have incentive to underreport it in order to pay less taxes, which is why the government charges taxes not based on a marginal benefit, but usually based on how much income we make. What about club goods? We talked about the idea of radio being a public good, but Sirius XM is actually a club good because it requires subscription. It is therefore excludable. Private golf courses allow access only to paying members. In fact, many courses require annual membership, and on top of it, you have to pay for each time you use the course. High-speed internet service requires subscription and payment. Streaming platforms like Netflix, Hulu, or HBO Max operate as club goods. The marginal cost of adding clients is typically very small until we get to a point where the good is crowded. So think of a fitness club on the bottom left. As long as it's not too crowded, we can keep adding members to the fitness club with very little cost to the club itself. However, we could get to a point, as we do on the bottom left, where the club is just too crowded and there aren't enough machines for everyone. So again, club good doesn't mean an unlimited capacity. It just means a capacity for multiple individuals. The same thing is true of toll roads. Most roads are public goods. Anyone can use them. They don't have to pay. But the government could build a toll road where you have to pay to use it. And typically, the longer you own the road, the more you have to pay. And this is, again, a type of a club good because it becomes excludable. One of the most common or the most problematic good are common resources. So common resources are rival, but they're difficult to exclude. So think about overfishing. Tuna is a pelagic fish, which means you travel long distances and you can find it deep uh, away from the shore. But a lot of the tuna is fished in international water. So each country can control the 200 nautical mile away from its shore, and anything else is international water and is not properly regulated. That means like that fishing nation like Ecuador, the United States, Japan, China, and Norway can all go into international fishery and try to catch as many fish as they can. But if they catch too many fish, the fishery collapses and no one else can enjoy it. Atmospheric pollution is also an example of a common resource. You can think of a 9-point emission where many of the cars and many factories are emitting pollution like sulfur dioxide or carbon dioxide into the air. It's really hard to regulate because it's hard to regulate the atmosphere above us. And our pollution here in the United States can actually affect our neighbor, like Mexico and Canada, much in the same way that fire in Canada often brings smoke to the United States. So we all share the same atmosphere, making it a common resource. Another interesting example of this is the queen conch, which is a delicacy in places like the Bahamas and in Jamaica, but has been over harvested, as we can see at the bottom left. When we take too many conch out of the water, eventually they'll disappear. And a very interesting example is space itself. So a lot of people don't realize, but right now we have around 10,000 satellites in space, and almost every day we launch more satellites into space. Those satellites are used for things like GPS, mapping, spying, and a lot of other activities. But we're getting to a point where the space is in the lower orbit, which is the orbit where the satellites can stay above the same point all the time, is getting more and more crowded. And there's really no way to regulate that space because this is in a public domain. So we have China, the United States, um, Japan, and other countries continuously launching these satellites into space, and it gets increasingly crowded. So in order to regulate our shared resource, we need some environmental agreement. Global agreement can help nations manage shared resources like international water or space or Antarctica. The Convention on Biological Diversity aims to protect ecosystem, especially in ecological hotspot. So this is one example of international agreement. We look at places like the Amazon in South America or the tundras in Canada, and we say, well, these are the areas we have to protect the most because they have a lot of biological diversity and we really depend on it. The Paris Agreement seeks to limit global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, which is about 3 degrees Fahrenheit. So we recognize that, yes, the Earth will continue rising, the Earth temperature, but we can only have it rise by a certain amount without creating major catastrophe. Countries can subsidize renewable energy and promote the electric vehicles. So at the bottom right, we see where the future could move to with a lot more solar panels, a lot more wind turbines, and the majority of the cars being electric vehicles. This may seem like a pipe dream, but there are countries like Norway, for example, where over 90% of all new vehicles are electric. So to summarize, public goods are non-rival, non-excludable, requiring government provision. The market doesn't provide enough of them. Research and education generate positive externalities. So when you get educated, that makes you a better citizen, increases your income potential, but also benefits other people around you because you can mentor them and you are a better individual. Free riding prevents market from offering public goods, which is why government provision is necessary. Environmental challenges require international cooperation and shared action, like the Paris Agreement. And different types of good require different policies and responses. So at the bottom right, we see the different world leaders raising hand shortly after signing the Paris Agreement. And on the bottom left, we see people cleaning a beach, which is again a public service because the beach is available for everyone. So let's have you think about a couple of discussion questions. Why do private firms invest in research compared to government, and what can we do about it? So start by thinking about that. Uh, should higher education receive more public funds due to externalities? Or should we even provide for free for everyone, or at least people with low income? How can nations better address climate change and protect common resources? So once again, my name is Yoav Vaxaman. I'm professor of economics, and thank you for joining me for this lesson. I hope we were both entertained and educated, and I wish you a wonderful day.